Hi, I'm Shay, an official Pokémon TCG caster, and with close to 30 years of Pokémon history, today I thought it would be fun to look at every year of the competitive Pokémon TCG and see what the most iconic card from that year was, because I'm sure that you don't know them all, which is sad, because they are all absolutely broken. So let's get started with 1999. While 1999 has some crazy cards like Computer Search, Professor Oak and Bill, all of which were under just the trainer classification, meaning you could play as many of them as you wanted in a single turn, which nowadays all of these kind of effects are tied to a once per turn supporter card or even a once per deck restriction, like Professor Oak being Professor Research and Professor Search being an ace spec. But there is one card from base set whose effect is so strong we haven't seen it again since, because even with such stipulations it would be too devastating. Superior energy removal was so strong that it instantly warped the entire metagame around it, allowing you to remove 2 of your opponent's energy with a single trainer card, made it pretty much that every metagame attacker had to either attack for 1 or 2 energy or have a way to reattach energy to itself, because the idea of setting up 3 or 4 energy attackers was just a dream. And sure, there were a couple exceptions to the rule, but they were definitely the minority. The power level of the early sets of Pokemon was definitely skewed more towards the trainers, and superior energy removal was the pinnacle of that power level. So this was quite an easy choice. 2000. Wow. 2000 had some serious power under the hood, with cards like Rocket Strap, which would annihilate your opponent's hand very fast, leading to a lot of non-games. Slowking, which due to a mistranslation error literally took over the entire metagame, forcing your opponent to flip a coin every time they wanted to play a trainer card for each Slowking you had in play. And then there was Sneasel, one of the game's earliest broken attackers. But even with them, there was one card that stood out among them. One card that you had to play at a full 4 count, otherwise you were literally throwing the game. And that card is Cleffa. In a game with superior energy removal and all the Rockets hand lock, Cleffa was the only bastion of the format, helping players get back into games. Eek would let you draw till you had 7 cards in your hand, letting you refill your hand constantly, especially useful after spamming all your trainer cards. And since it would attack for 1 energy, it was safe from all the energy removal cards, and it had a free retreat cost so you could maneuver into your attackers whenever you were ready. And with its poker body, you would avoid all damage from your opponent 50% of the time, with that baby Pokemon rule. So against super fast aggro decks, you could wall them out while drawing a ton of cards and setting up. Cleffa was so strong that if you look at any deck list from that era, you will see a ton of Cleffa. Now for 2001, I've picked an odd one, but I've chosen Unknown M. Unknown N was mistranslated, meaning that its Pokepower would actually activate on self-damage, and so would Special Metal Energy. This meant Blissey actually became a secret wonder deck at the 2002 World Championship, and it actually won one of the divisions. So while it is a pretty obscure choice, it had its mark on Pokemon history. The same can be said for Dark Fraligator in 2002, whose scare Pokemon power would immobilize baby Pokemon, meaning Cleffa, Pichu and Tyrogue were all instantly stopped. And this also won one of the age divisions at the 2002 World Championships. 2003, Delcatty. Delcatty was the face of this era of Pokemon. Its power energy draw was pretty simple but extremely strong, letting you discard an energy from your hand to draw 3 cards. When combined with Magneton a little later, you'd have a little loop of discarding energy to draw cards and then instantly getting them straight back again with Magneton. One of the best on-board based draw engines we have ever seen, while also providing great synergy for decks that wanted energy in the discard pile, like Blaziken for example, one of the format's heavy hitters. Fantastic card. 2004. Pidgeot was a monster, a one-prize Pokemon that would search out any card you liked once per turn. This was widespread, seeing a play in a ton of different archetypes, all to great success. However, as amazing as Pidgeot was, I'm not giving it to the old quick searcher. Instead, I'm giving it to the focal point of a deck that rocked the 2004 World Championships, doing something we have never seen again since, winning all 3 age divisions. I'm of course talking about Magma Groudon EX. This was the build around of the Magma deck that had a ton of options. Claydol for Gardevoir and energy manipulation, Camrot for Blossom and Sceptile, and Groudon to punch super hard with Pulverize and Linear Attack, all on a basic Pokemon that had no right to be hitting as hard as it could, with buffs like Special Darkness Energy and Curse Stone too. All of this resulted in Magma taking over the 2004 World Championships in a way we haven't seen again since. 2005. The Holland supporters were on a typically lower power level compared to other supporter cards of the time, but they all saw a ton of play. Why is this? Well, that's because of an item card so busted that we have never seen it again. I'm of course talking about Holland Transceiver, which should let you get a Holland supporter from your deck or discard, which is like VS Seeker and Team Rocket's Transceiver slapped into one card. VS Seeker would only grab supporters from the discard pile, and that saw a ton of play. And right now, Rocket's Transceiver only grabs supporters from the deck, and that sees play as well. This saw the flexibility of the Holland Transceiver engine brute force Holland supporters to see a ton of play, because Transceiver would essentially dead draw proof yourself. Terrific card. 2006. 2006 has Cessation Crystal, quite simply the best tool card of all time. Simple. While attached to a Pokemon that was in the active, it would turn off Poke Powers and bodies. We have never seen a tool card like this ever again because it's way too strong. It got second place at Worlds paired with Blissey and top 4 with Empoleon as well. A tool card that would strike fear into your opponent's heart. Could you imagine how much play a tool card would get now if it turned off all abilities while it was in the active? An absolutely terrifying thought. 2007, this card has a strong case at being the best Pokemon card of all time. It allows you to fundamentally break the game in 2 ways, while also locking down your opponent at the same time, resulting in a World Championship victory and a second place as well. We are of course talking about Gardevoir from Secret Wonders. Its Poke Power Telepass would let you use any supporters from your opponent's discard pile as the effect of this power, letting you double up on consistency supporters, disruption supporters, or even a split of both. Since somehow Telepass wouldn't count as your supporter for the turn, its attack Psychic Lock did a respectable 60 damage as well, and stopped your opponent from using any Poke Powers next turn. This would slam a ton of the format, since the game relied on powers like Claydol and Uxie, which was everyone's draw engine, of a Gardevoir, and a bit later on Luxray GL Level X. Psychic Lock would stop them all, and it's worth noting that the deck had access to Gallade, which would one-shot anything towards the start of the game, making it one of the most strongest decks of all time, staying competitive right up until it rotated. Crazy, crazy card. 2008. This might be the most stacked year, with so many format defining cards, like all the Stormfront cards like Gengar, Gyarados and Machamp, all of which had their fingerprints over the metagame in a massive way. We even have Uxie, a mad card that would let you draw till you had 7 cards in your hand when you put it into play, on a basic 1 prize Pokemon, and its attack will stop you from ever decking out as well. And if that wasn't enough, you had a level X that would let you filter cards into your hand throughout the rest of the game, in a similar way to what Dracloak or Pidgeot does now and slightly in the past. All of this meant Uxie was a format staple. And with that being said, it's not even the pick for 2008. Instead, we have to give it to Claydol. Its Cosmic Power would let you put 2 cards from your hand to the bottom of your deck, and then you could draw till you had 6 cards in your hand. On face value, this gives you a ton of draw power. But if you dig a little deeper, it actually gives you immense control of your deck. Because if you've got cards in your hand you want to save for the late game, fling them to the bottom, and you're guaranteed to not draw into them. Meaning if you choose not to play any cards that shuffle your deck, you know what's at the bottom and you can keep it that way. And since you can always put 2 cards to the bottom, it realistically means you should be able to draw something with Claydol every turn. This was so strong that some games were decided simply by who got Claydol out first. Amazing card. 2009. Now I really want to give this to Beedrill, since it stunned the world winning the World Championships this year, and there's great synergy between these 2 Beedrill cards, since one would search out grass type Pokemon and the other one would do more damage for each Beedrill you had in play. This deck was fast, strong and powerful, but it must be said the reason it works so well is because of Broken Time Space, and that's the card I'm giving 2009 to. A Stadium card that let you completely ignore all evolution rules by allowing Pokemon to evolve on the first turn that's put into play and on your first turn of the game. This helped a lot of Pokemon combat the big basics at the time, while also speeding up the game, allowing decks like Beedrill to function, or later on Donphan Prime as well. We have seen similar effects with cards like Forest of Giant Plants, which ended up getting banned. So creatures learnt their lesson when they made Grand Tree, which can only be used once per turn, and it's a once per deck A spec, making it still potent but a lot less reliable. all because of how broken Time Space really was. 2010. It's rare in a Pokemon TCG to have a card be your whole core. That's exactly what Magnezone did. Magnetic Draw would let you draw to have 6 cards in your hand, which was even stronger at the time when you would consider that the supporter cards of this era really didn't draw you cards, so Magnetic Draw was invaluable. Not only that, but its attack was insane as well, letting you Lost Zone any amount of energy you liked from your Pokemon, and you would deal 50 for each one you sent to the Lost Zone. So technically an endless damage cap. This flexibility saw Magnezone have a ton of partners, like Yanmega, who could attack for free, meaning your turn attachments could all be lost burn safely, but Magnezone paired with Ember, which would let you attach as many fire energy as you liked in a turn. This was so strong that it won 2011 Worlds, since you could draw cards, hit hard, attach a ton of energy, and you even had superpower cards like Rayquaza Deoxys Legend to pick up extra prize cards as well. What more can you ask for? 2011 was a big turning point in the Pokemon TCG. Clearly the design philosophy changed, and the black and white set made that very obvious. Professor Juniper made previous draw supporters look like complete amateurs, since drawing 7 at once was simply unheard of at the time. And only once has this Professor Juniper-like effect ever left our format, making it a staple for years and years and years, via Professor's Research and Professor Sycamore. However, I have to give this title to Reshiram and to a lesser extent Zekrom. These were unholy big basic one prize Pokemon that instantly demanded respect. 130 hit points on a basic Pokemon at the time was nuts. Compare that to Yanmega's 110 as a stage 1 or Magnezone's hit points on a stage 2. Not only were they behemoths with their hit points, but their attacks were insane as well. Outrage was just mean, dealing more damage back for each damage counter on Reshiram or Zekrom, meaning if you failed to one-shot it, which was fairly often, you were in big trouble. But they both had big 120 nuke attacks in Blue Flare and Bolt Strike. Zekrom was actually able to get this going on your first turn of the game with a combination of Pachirisu and Shaman, which was nuts. And even with that in mind, Reshiram was still the better out of the two, since it could be paired with Ember, which won Worlds, but also Tythrosian Prime. This saw Reshiram take over the World Championships that year, meaning 2011 Worlds was basically Reshiram's Worlds. 2012. Now, if Zekrom and Reshiram started the big basic train, Darkrai and Mewtwo EX turned that train into a rocket ship that left the atmosphere. 2012 saw the return of EX cards back into the Pokemon trading card game. All basic Pokemon that gave up 2 prize cards instead of 1 when they got KO'd, meaning you only had to KO 3 EX Pokemon to win the game versus 6 1 prize Pokemon. To compensate, EX Pokemon have vastly increased hit points and powered up attacks. And while Tornadus saw some play out the gates as well, Mewtwo was by far the obvious standout. X-Ball dealing 20 damage for each one of the energy attached to both active Pokemon. This was super strong, meaning if your opponent couldn't dispatch your loaded Mewtwo quickly, it would sweep you out of the game. Mewtwo was so strong that the format literally became who had more Mewtwo in their deck, since if you had more, you was probably going to win. Darkrai came out soon after to help rein in Mewtwo a little bit, because it resisted Mewtwo, but on its own it was a terrifying card as well. Dark Cloak gave everything with a dark energy of free retreat cost, which was nice, and then later on made Darkrai EX a toolbox bench sitter for years, while obviously being the standout focal point in its own decks. Its attack Night Spear was perfect, 90 to the active and 30 to a bench Pokemon. 30 was enough to pressure evolving Pokemon like Tynamo and Electric, since it only had 90 hit points, so 3 Night Spears and it was a wrap for them. But in a cruel twist of fate, Mewtwo and Darkrai ended up teaming up to make a deadly deck that quite honestly you had no reason not to play. This was so strong that at the 2012 World Championships, it was literally a Darkrai Mewtwo fest. I mean, look at these results. Both saw play right up until they rotated, and it expanded for a little while as well. 2013 saw the Plasma Pokemon get added to the game. Think of past villainous Pokemon, or even the current Team Rocket and Owner's Pokemon. Named Pokemon that get special supporting cards to beef them up. Lugia EX was one of my favourites, taking extra prizes when it KO'd something, and my good friend Demetrius Eaton actually won UK Nationals with this card. Thundurus and Deoxys were very strong. Plasmacurium also saw a ton of play, and we have to give a massive shout out to Floatstone for being one of the best tool cards ever created, maybe only second to Cessation Crystal. Also, we have to give a shout out to the Laser Bank combo for being a mass fixer in a ton of decks, and quite honestly, Hypnotoxic Laser Sleep Flips would often decide games on their own. But in the end, it has to go to Genesect EX. Red Signal was one of the best abilities in the game. In a format where Pokemon Catcher was nerfed to now require a coin flip, reliable Gust was very hard to come by, most likely giving up your precious support for the term, in Lysandre. Red Signal would get around that though. Its attack Megalo Cannon was okay, KOing Keldeo EX via weakness, but the real star of the show was its big G booster A-Spec card, which gave Genesect a new attack. That literally meant you didn't care what was in your opponent's active because it was getting KO'd, dealing a monstrous 200 damage and going through all effects on your opponent's active, meaning pesky safeguard Pokemon like Suicune and Sigilyph were no longer safe. You had Virizion to accelerate energy and make you immune to those pesky Hypnotoxic laser cards that I mentioned earlier as well. This deck was so strong that even in the Yveltal Garb metagame, which was by far the most played deck, Virgin absolutely flew through them, making the finals of the World Championships that year a Virizion Genesect mirror match. Incredible scene. 2014. Now this was a tough decision, but it has to go to Seismitoad EX. Its attack named Quaking Punch still strikes fear into the hearts of Pokemon players all over the world to this day. For a ridiculous double colorless energy attachment, you would deal 30 damage and then prevent your opponents from playing any item cards next turn. This was devastating because if you kept on announcing Quaking Punch over and over and over again, your opponent would really struggle to get set up and in the game. And since it was a basic Pokemon, after you absorb some weak attacks, which your opponent would be firing off since they were, really limited in their setup, you could use Super Scoop Up or AZ to pick the Seismitoad back up, put it straight back down again. So mean. Seismitoad quite honestly changed the game, and at times it felt super unfair to play against. Since it was so flexible, you had a ton of partners, like the Crobat line to chip in extra damage, Crawdon if he was a Chad like me, Giratina EX to lock down special energy and be super annoying to Mega Pokemon, and Garbodor to ability lock as well, if you really wanted to suck all the fun out of the room. People were very happy when Seismitoad rotated, and for good reason. 2015. Shaman EX. No point in beating around the bush here, is there? This was the draw engine of every deck in format, no ifs, ands or buts. A basic Pokemon that would let you draw to add 6 cards in your hand when you put it into play. And I really don't have to explain why this is so good, do I? Even though it was an EX Pokemon with 110 hit points, it really didn't matter. Everyone played at least 3, and quite honestly 4 was preferred. Even though I only had 3 because it got so expensive, around £70 for a half art low rarity version. And it was the backbone of the whole format and ended up getting banned and expanded as well. 2016. Now this is going to be a controversial pick, I know, but come on, Mega Ordino winning Worlds this year, if not the best Pokemon story we have ever seen. Mega Ordino was on nobody's radar, so for it to come in and win the World Championships this year was crazy. It was the perfect meta call, dealing 110 damage to the active to one of your opponent's Pokemon if you played a supporter card this turn. Since most of the format was one prize low hit point decks like Night March and Vespiquen, Mega Ordino ran through like a hot knife through butter, all the way to the finals where it decimated Greninja there as well. The best Cinderella story we have ever seen. 2017. Now this might be the toughest year I had to pick. We have Tapu Lele with the Wonder Tag ability, letting you grab any supporter from your deck when you benched it. This obviously saw play in everything because you could Lele for Guzma, Lily or Bridget, all of which was the bread and butter of the format at one point. One of the biggest beneficiaries of that Tapu Lele for Bridget play was Zoroark GX, which captured everyone's hearts at EUIC 2017, running through the format with a ton of variants, thanks to just how flexible it was as a draw engine and a perfect attacker. However, I'm going to give it to Trashalanche Garbodor. I don't think we've ever quite seen a card change the game from the second it came out like Garbodor did. Let's paint a picture. Before Guardians Rising came out, the format ran on turbo item cards like Trainer's Mail, VS Seeker, Ultra Ball and Max Elixir. And all of those are some of the strongest item cards we've ever seen, let's be honest. Then Garbodor came out and punished all of those items by dealing 20 damage for each item card in your opponent's discard pile. And instantly, all of those turbo items were yeeted out of the format to never be seen again. That's how drastic it really was. Garbodor ran the format and kept so much in check at once it was insane, making the whole player base really think about every item card they played, because they knew that it would come back to bite them later on. And don't forget, you would pair this with a Garbotoxin Garbodor to lock off opponents' abilities as well. We have never seen a card have such impact be so sudden and severe. 2018. Rayquaza GX took over this year's World Championships with 4 in top 8. Its ability Stormy Winds would let you attach extra energy, and its attack would deal more damage for each energy attached to all your Pokemon. This created a terrifying rush deck, and even later on where a lot of the support cards for it would rotate, it was still competitive with Vikavolt. Scary card. 2019. 2019 had a ton of options. Team Up Jirachi was the engine for a lot of decks, letting you filter cards into your hand over the course of the whole game. World Up was a single supporter that made Fire type some of the strongest it have ever been for years in the Pokémon TCG. Pikarom was a format titan from the second it got printed to the second it rotated, but it has to be many people's most hated card of all time, a card that forced a lot of players to straight up quit the game until it rotated. Arceus Dialga Palkia GX. Its once per game GX attack would boost all your Pokemon's damage by 30 for the rest of the game, which would have been good on its own, game breaking enough to be honest. But if you ever KO'd something, you would also take an additional prize card. So bear in mind you have to take 6 prize cards to win the game. This meant all you had to do was KO 3 1 prize Pokemon instead of 6, or 2 prize Pokemon instead of 3. And that's exactly what ADP decks looked to do. By removing bench hitters like Crobat V, Dedenne GX and Tapu Lele with its attack Ultimate Ray, which was now boosted to 180 damage. Early on, the main partner for ADP was Keljo GX, a safeguard Pokemon that could shred as well. This was okay, but it wasn't the format titan it was when Zacian V came out, since now it could just simply reach over the top of everything with enough damage modifiers, and Zacian was a basic Pokemon that was easy enough to set up as well, especially with Metal Saucer, KOing tag team Pokemon with ease. Mawile GX would cheese your opponent's Pokemon into play, in case they tried to get cheeky and not put them down, with its ability. And later on, Aegislash V literally made the deck uncountable, giving you a shred attacker that didn't care about any safeguard Pokemon that otherwise would wall your deck completely. This led to the phrase Boss Game becoming a raw cry for the community's frustration of the deck, since ADP players often wouldn't even try and KO what was in your active, they would just go around it with boss's orders for easy one-shots. And with this awkward prize skewing, it made it impossible for one prize decks to compete against you, since it was impossible to outvalue them. All of this made ADP one of the most hated decks of all time, but my god, it was very strong. 2020. We mentioned Zacian V a little bit there, and quite honestly that is just the tip of Zacian's iceberg, since not only was it the premier partner for ADP, but it also saw a lot of play with Lucario Melmetal Tag Team as well, which was like the complete opposite of ADP, in the sense that ADP was trying to buff damage, but Lucario was trying to reduce all damage coming into your metal type, with its GX attack and cards like Metal Fire Pan, Metal Coating Energy and Goggles. This meant Zacian was in 2 tier 1 decks at the exact same time. In fact, scratch that, since it was in another one at the time as well, Chinchino Mill, a deck that would spam Belelba and Bryson Man twice in the turn, thanks to Lieutenant Surge's strategy, meaning you would discard the top 6 cards of your opponent's deck, then use Power Pad and Oranguru to do it all over again. Zacian was in that deck for its ability Intrepid Sword, which would let you end your turn by drawing the top 3 cards of your deck, and you could attach any metal energy you found there. Now, Chinchino Mill didn't actually play any metal energy, but it was still a +3 cards at the start of the game. In fact, scratch that as well, since there was another top tier Zacian deck in Combo Zacian, a deck that I actually created, where you would aim to be an ADP deck without having to give up a turn using Ultra Creation. Since with a combination of Oranguru and Mr. Mime, we could reliably use Jirachi Prism's ability to take an extra prize card if we took it down as a face down prize card, meaning we essentially got a one-time Ultra Creation buff. But even after all of that, it has to go to Inteleon. While it took Inteleon a while to get out the gates and hit the mainstream, when it did, it was literally the entire format. I kid you not, the format was just Inteleon plus one of 6 or 7 partners. It was insane. Its ability would let you search your deck for 2 trainer cards when you evolved into it. Incredible scenes. And to top it off, the Drizzle had the same ability but for 1 trainer card as well. So you could evolve up throughout the entire line throughout the whole game, search Ring for whatever you liked. This meant you was essentially dead draw proof, since this also existed at the same time as Scoop Up Net, so once you used your Inteleon, straight into your hand, ready to put it back down again. Everywhere you would go, shady dealings this, shady dealings that, it was crazy. 2021. Now I can't lie, I am a bit of a Mew VMAX fanboy. I played it exclusively this season, resulting in me getting a top 128 at EUIC 2022. The deck was fast, aggressive, and adapted to the times, the 2023 World Championships, arguably long after its expiration date. But as strong as the deck was, there was only one card that I could realistically put here, and that was Path to the Peak. This stadium completely flipped the format on its head. A stadium that would turn off all wall-box Pokemon abilities while it was in play. This meant wall-box decks like Mew VMAX, funnily enough, couldn't be carefree, since at any time a Path to the Peak would shut you down, meaning you had to play the game differently, and play some stadium cards, or at the very least some Lost Vacuums and Punkaboo, since you simply couldn't ignore Path to the Peak, it was that strong. On its own, this was a win condition for a ton of decks, like Giratina V-Star for example, and Arctina as well, funnily enough, using Path to the Peak as part of their core strategy. It is rare for stadium cards to be as impactful as this, but Path truly was the comb bee's knees. 2022 had some big hitters. 2022 had some big hitters in the Silver Tempest set like Lugia V-Star and Archeops, which is arguably the most oppressive deck of all time. Regidrago V-Star that had 4 of the top 8 slots at 2024 Worlds and was the best deck in format for a very long time. So it's crazy that I have to give it to something else, but this card had a very good shot of being the best card of all time, Radiant Greninja. This card really did it all. Its Conceal card's ability would let you discard an energy from your hand to draw 2 cards. Considering this is on a basic Pokemon, this is incredible. And this would have saw a ton of play even if it didn't have an attack, because it really is that good. However, it did have an equally game-ending attack, Moonlight Shuriken. This would deal 90 damage to any 2 of your opponent's Pokemon in any way you like. This could be used to pick up missed KOs in the mid to late game, bring down 2 VMAX Pokemon into range of another attack, but its most devastating use case was to KO 2 evolving basic Pokemon before they had a chance to evolve, KOing 2 Rolts or 2 Frigibacks, 2 Beldums, or 2 Sobble or even Drizzle as well. This card was so strong and effective that any deck that could use water energy simply had to play this. Lost Box, Baxcalibur, Palkia V-Star, and even making some decks skew their decks entirely just so they could use it, like Golden Go and Roaring Moon that often play a split water energy package just to make use of this card. That's how strong it really was. A basic Pokemon that draw cards and ended games with its attack. All on a one prizer as well. Madness. 2023. Now this was actually hard because there are a lot of standout cards from this year, but there's only been one that has been competitive from the exact second it came out to right now. Arguably, even though it's lost a ton of pieces along the way that would have killed off any other deck, but Gardevoir EX still remains strong. Its ability Psychic Embrace lets you attach as many Psychic from your hand to your Pokemon from your discard pile as you like, but you will put 20 damage on the recipient for each energy. Now that sounds like a hefty downside, right? While the main attackers in Gardevoir like Screamtail and Drifloon all do more damage for each damage counter on themselves, so the effect actually helps you out. Back in the day, Gardevoir EX had the Refinement Curlier to draw cards and the Shining Arcana Gardevoir to draw cards and be a massive one prize attacking threat, especially with reversal energy. And Zacian V was a great get out of jail free card. All of which has rotated since, and Gardevoir is still strong, probably the best deck in format, winning like 4 regionals in a row recently, getting second place at 2023 Worlds, as well as dominating the North American International Championships 2025, with the final being a Gardevoir mirror match. It doesn't seem like anything apart from rotation will stop Gardevoir EX, let's be honest. 2024, Tilmar's Ogerpon transformed the format. Its ability would let you get extra grass energy into play and draw cards at the same time, all on a basic Pokemon. This immediately unlocked Regidrago V-Star at NAIC that year and it instantly became the best deck in format. Raging Bolt was also unlocked instantly from a joke card all the way to a top 3 deck in format. And its attack was very good too, in Myriad Leaf Shower, that KO Charizard EX, instantly removing it from the top of the metagame thanks to hitting it for weakness. At the 2024 World Championships, 25% of the metagame was Teal Mask Ogerpon decks. That's how crazy it really is. Although we do have to give a massive shout out to Monkey Dory, who seems to be absolutely running the format right now, with multiple decks just trying to abuse it in the most efficient way. Gardevoir, Dragapult, Grimmsnarl, literally any deck that can play Monkey Dory absolutely has to. And 2025? Well, we're just going to have to wait and see how the rest of this format pans out. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Like the video and consider subscribing. And why don't you watch this video here? Why 2016 was actually the craziest year in all TCG history.